Hi everyone, we're here again at home instead doing one of our programs for Armstrong and my dog and me. And this time we're going to divert just a little bit and we're going to talk about some of the hazards that occur to our fish in our local ponds and lakes and places like that. And I was really interested with this whenever I talked to Sue one time, who I'll introduce you in a minute, but we were talking about this and I said, you got to tell me that people leave fishing line around and the seagulls and the birds and ducks and all that stuff can get stuck in it. So that's why I asked her to come today, because we believe we are very, very close to the fishing season in Erie, but it doesn't really matter because it probably goes on forever. So I'm going to introduce to you Sue DeArment, who's done some other programs for me. Sue, tell us about yourself, and then you can introduce Dorothy.
Thank you. I'm the founder of Wildlife in Need. I used to be a rehabilitator for Tamarack Wildlife. I retired, took a 3-year break, and joined the Wildlife Council. Ended up creating the Wildlife in Need Emergency Response of Pennsylvania, which is a statewide network of volunteers. We're all volunteers that are called by the concerned public regarding animals that need help and need to be taken to the rehab center. And that we are a capture service. So a lot of people are pretty nervous about trying to approach a goose, a swan, any type of bird of prey. We help with that and get them to a rehab center for evaluation and treatment.
So you capture and transport, basically?
We capture, we transport what we capture in most cases.
Oh, okay.
There's some exceptions.
And tell us who
One of our volunteers
Okay.
I have with me today is Dorothy Krupa, and she can talk about herself.
Yeah, I'm retired. I'm from Erie, and I'm a volunteer that does capture and transport for sick, injured, and orphan wildlife.
Okay, so why tell us about how much of a problem is this with the fishing line and stuff like that, and why is it a problem, and give us some background on this.
We get a lot of calls on the waterways, especially in community parks where there's ponds, where somebody notices that there's a fishing line or lure on waterfowl. There are also other animals that get caught up in this too that we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's a real challenge, first of all, of trying to get an animal that is in the waterway and, try to assess the situation first to see if this is even feasible, or even if we can use specialized equipment, or if we need a group rescue in order to get this animal that is stuck in the fishing line or lure some help.
Is this just a matter of educating the public? Because most of them do people just not care? I'm not a fisher person, but if I'm fishing and I would assume that I've got my line tangled and I've taken the line and tried to put it through the rod and stuff like that, then what do? Throw the line off to the side?
Usually what happens, I fish, I don't know about Dorothy, I used to fish when I had time to do so.
Oh, yes.
I don't do that anymore. What happens is a lot of people get something tangled up, and it's really difficult to untangle fishing line, so oftentimes they just take it off their reel and cut it and leave it. Some situations, they get caught. The lure or the hook gets caught on something, and they can't get it dislodged.
Are a lot of them underwater?
Yes.
The ones that are caught?
Some are. Some you see, I also kayak, I think Dorothy does as well. You can see them strung between, branches or whatever is in the water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when I kayak, I actually spend a lot of time picking those up because I know what it does to the animals. So what it is yes, it is an education type thing, because fishing line isn't dissolvable. It's something that lasts for quite a long time. And when it's put down somewhere and not picked up, this is when other animals and people get in trouble. I mean, we've gone out for a rescue before and tripped over fishing line that was strung between a a pier or something. So education is very important. It's like anything else. You have ethical fisher people and you have those that aren't and don't care that they're littering.
Mm-hmm.
And we need everybody's help in order to prevent such situations happening. And I think that the biggest thing, who's ever mentoring the children that are fishing, need to teach the children. They need to pick up after themselves, also pick up after others when they see fishing line or lures laying around.
And educate the parents.
Educate the parents too, yeah.
The kids are easy to educate generally. It's the parents who know the facts and don't do anything about it. That's my
Well, yeah,
general dealing on a lot of
right,
issues too.
right, uh-huh.
So if I go to, where do we find it around here? Where's your most common place that you find it, or is it just everywhere, all the ponds?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. It's most noticeable at ponds and not rushing water like your streams, especially when there's accumulation of people that are fishing. It's very hard to find something that is left behind on like French Creek, because it's always flowing and there's not as many people accumulating that are fishing along the shores of French Creek, maybe in certain areas. But it's the community ponds or Tamarack Lake around here, Prescott, constant problem up there. And you can talk about that because you are from Erie. And
I'd say it's
see
any
a
body
lot.
of water. I'd say any pond, any lake, any stream. If someone fishes it, there can be fishing line, hooks, or lures around.
Well, how does it, you've got some lures here. How does that work with lures? That it gets hooked, or what gets hooked, or?
Well, there can be two different ways. I mean, the lures obviously are made to try to resemble a fish, so that it lures a bigger fish if you're fishing.
Sure.
So, aquatic birds like gulls or loons or mergansers that are fish eaters.
What is it called?
A merganser is a type of water bird.
Oh, okay.
Okay, kind of. So if they're see the flash of what they think is a fish, because they've got the shiny part that mimics some native species, they'll dive or grab at it. And if it's not a real fish, if it's a lure, then they're at risk, of course, of getting a treble hook. If they get it in the beak, the dilemma too, if they've already got it stuck in their mouth, but then the dilemma is, lures are oftentimes made with more than one treble hook.
Yes.
So now they get it in the beak, and then the next thing you know, it ends up caught in the shoulder, it caught in the wing. Now they can't even fly or move, or they're not maneuverable anymore. So sometimes fishermen actually will catch a bird. Other times, if these break off, and yeah, they're going to break off, they'll snag on a tree limb, they'll snag on a stump you didn't see or something, and they'll break off and end up maybe washing up on shore. Again, now it looks like, and a scavenger bird that's coming around looking for something to eat sees what still looks like a nice fresh fish, and the same problem. They go with their beak to pick it up, and now they've got a hook in their mouth instead of lunch.
What about the different lines that you've got there? I'm interested in all the different things you have on this table here.
Well, the one that is, we call it the strongest, it's a braided fishing line. It's very hard to break. And all fishing line have certain levels of strength, but I can't break this. I mean, look at...
Well, now what type of fishing would you be doing with a line?
Anything you can fish for that. There's all sorts of different types of fishing that happens, and usually the least expensive is your the monofilament line, but you have different pounds of weight that these are, and still they're not dissolvable. They don't break. They actually, when they twist around something, like waterfowl doesn't know, or the animal doesn't know, and they're going to keep twisting. And what's going to happen?
To get away, which makes it tighter.
Right, and then when they do get away, it's still around them, and it still strangles that leg. So you end up with, if you don't get it in time, the animal in time that is involved with this, they may lose a leg. So, and we do have pictures, and of this, but there's some situations there where it's wrapped around. You see how swollen the foot is,
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's
okay.
discolored. So it enstrangles that, and they lose circulation, and then if not gotten soon enough, they can lose a limb. Now, with most waterfowl that are heavy, you think of geese, and your swans are heavy birds. If they end up losing a leg, that affects the good leg, where they're putting a lot of weight on the one leg in order to maneuver, however they do it, whether they use their wings to, try to get on land, to get to a food source or whatever. It ends up affecting that foot, and it ends up usually with what they call bumblefoot, which is a bacterial infection in the foot, like a bed sore to people. And that eventually becomes infected and also causes the infection to go through their body and
So,
kills them.
so the average person that sees a bird or something entangled in line can't do anything about it.
We recommend that they call if people know how to take the line off. Usually they don't, though. They usually cut part of it off because it's entangled maybe on a branch. And they think, well, if we cut that, then it'll be okay. No, the whole line needs to be taken off of the animal.
What were you going to say, Dorothy?
Well, I think if they feel comfortable catching it and they are going to take the time to untangle it, I would encourage them to do that. If they're already there and they can safely catch the animal and get the line off, they just need to make sure they get it completely off. The other thing you want to look for is, especially like we get, it's common to get calls with geese. Geese get fishing line wrapped around their legs all the time. And as the picture shows, as that line tightens, it'll eventually cut into the skin. Well, now if you've got a break in the skin, you've got an open wound, you've got a risk for an infection. If the animal has an infection, it's not as simple as just taking the fishing line off and saying, oh, you're fine, I'll let you go. If it has an infection, if there's swelling and inflammation, it really does need to go to a wildlife rehabilitator then. Because I've taken geese to Tamarack Wildlife Center and they've been there for over a week while they're getting wound care and antibiotic treatment to eliminate the infection before they can be successfully rehabilitated and released. But if there's no open wound and if you feel comfortable taking the line off, I would encourage a person to get it done.
I think I'll call you.
Yeah, a
I
lot of
can't
people
imagine.
do because they're afraid of geese. Or swans are big, but yeah, if they do feel comfortable, I agree with Dorothy and all of that. There's all sorts of scenarios, that we get involved with. The other thing is I know of some fishermen when they were younger. They tell me stories that they were casting out, and there was a lure, and they thought, oh, it'd be fun to see if the seagull
We'll go after
the
the-
gull will go after it, or whatever animals out there.
That's rather sadistic.
Well, they don't
Yeah.
think it's going to happen. And then all of a sudden they get this animal caught and they're like, wow, I caught it, but what am I going to do now?
Yeah, now what?
And so what we recommend, if something like that's going to happen, like it can happen like lures float. Usually, they don't necessarily sink down unless they have other
Weights on something
them
like
to go down. And there'll be some gulls, and if anybody's ever fished on the Great Lakes or fished anywhere where there's a lot of gulls,
Seagulls.
they're going to come down and grab what they can because they're scavengers, they're hungry, there's a bunch of them, and they don't know it's not real. And then all of a sudden they get this, and what we recommend is people that run into situations like that, they're not going to get in trouble from us. Reel it in. Cover it with a jacket, with a towel or something. If they can, remove it without injuring the animal more, because hooks, well, this is a straight hook here. I don't have the hook that has other barbs on it. You don't want to yank it out because you're gonna hurt that animal, may injure that animal, that's when, too, you wanna call us and we'll meet you there, and, you know, if we can't get it out, we'll take it to a wildlife rehabilitator. But how hooks are made with those barbs on it, it just tears if you pull
Right.
against it. So what it is, if you can cut the end, because you know on a hook, like for instance this little hook, this is used for like bluegills and stuff like that. You know, that's in there. You want to cut that off, but you want to have a hold like with hemostats here. Now most fishermen have hemostats, but if you can cut and push through, that causes less damage. You're going in the, you know, pushing it out the way it was going in.
How many people really care about this, fishermen? They don't really care about the lines?
There's all different kinds of ethical people out there. It's those that aren't ethical that make it bad for everybody else. I mean, yeah, and some people don't know. You know.
No, they just take the line off the fishing pole and
They cut it and let the
cut
bird
and
go.
throw it.
Right.
Yeah, they cut and let the bird go.
Now we had a turtle that I was going after at one point in time, but I couldn't get to it because it just, every time it saw me, it dove in the water.
Forget you,
know,
yeah.
And it had this hook in its mouth. But eventually they had people monitoring it, and it eventually dissolved. So the hooks will dissolve at some point in time, not the line. So if there was line
Oh,
on
the
it,
hook will, but not the line.
right, but it takes time, but it can still do damage. It can prevent. I've had like the triple hook deal where people are trying to catch, you know, your smaller fish, and a great blue heron swallowed it. You know, so he couldn't eat, and he was getting weaker. So we were able to get it and get that removed, and I don't remember the results of that. We have pictures of other great blue herons. There's one like here, this happened years ago, but a guy was watching the blue heron on his pond, and he said he saw it stab at fish, but never got the fish, and it would throw the fish on the ground, but not be able to eat it, and he didn't know why. Well, 4 days later, they called us in. By then, this great blue heron was weak, and we just picked it up. I got it home, and by the time I got it home, it passed.
Oh, wow.
And it was only there's probably a sinker on there, and it was only, the line was only that much, and it was wrapped around the tip of the bill.
Yep.
And wouldn't allow the heron to actually open his mouth. So he actually starved to death.
And there's a problem then with hooks and all that with turtles and all
Everything.
kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes, as we go further on, I mean, we have some other pictures of, this was a great blue heron at Woodcock Dam. Lure and line wrapped around both legs. Fortunate,
heavens.
and it was laying still like this, both wings out like this on the ground, because it couldn't even get up. And somebody I knew called us in this year, and I was able to get it over to Tamarack, and I believe it made it. Fortunately. Other
Wow.
things, here's the situation, look at this. This was in Adams County along a quiet creek bed. People were walking, and all of a sudden they looked, and there was a barred owl hanging from a dead limb. And this particular barred owl was hanging, and it was a steel lead, so no way could it get loose. So our people went in, what's ingenious about this is it was far away from the shore. There was a 3-foot drop to get down to
naturally,
the bottom.
yeah.
You know, it was difficult. And one person needed to be, it took 2 people. One person needed to have the net that when it did fall into the water, it would be caught by the net. So you had to have the net underneath. And the other person tried with her weight to break the limb. And she couldn't, so she went back to her vehicle, and she's a farm girl. You know, and it's like, I credit these farm people for the ingenuity that
Oh,
they
yeah,
have.
I'm sure.
You know, and she found a strap in her vehicle. And she was able to put the strap around the, further out on the limb and yank it down and get this barred out of that situation. And then there's a picture of the damage that it did to that wing, and it was irreparable, unfortunately, that barred out.
So they euthanized them.
Right. Another picture is a eagle. Here's an eagle that has a lure in it and trying to get it off. Now I have to tell you, if there's a lure like this, we've had geese actually drowned because it was hooked on their mouth or hooked somewhere on the body, reaching back to get it off, got hooked again, and here its head was stuck underwater. So it's a killer, you know, to these wild animals.
So who educates people on this? How? How do people, I mean, you and I have talked, but
Right.
I bet I could bring this up at a Friday night, sitting around with a bunch of people, and they would have no idea that this was an issue.
That's right.
What do you do about getting people educated towards that?
This program,
This, of course.
I'm not sure what U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or the Boat Commission recommends, but I think I've seen some literature that they have. I don't know if it's in the regulations for fishing, so I'm not sure. But it is a problem, and the more we talk about it, I mean, it's been in the newspaper, you know,
I've never
Tamarack.
heard about it till you
in
told me.
Tamarack Lake, you know, how we put the receptacles up so that people would put their fishing line in there, and they may not think about that until they see the sign that's wrapped around the, you know, the fishing line receptacle, which is just a PVC pipe.
PVC pipe with a loop on the,
Yeah, on a, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you just put it in there and drop it in there.
Right, and then volunteers, Friends of Tamarack, do go out weekly and clean them out. So people are putting their fishing line in the receptacles. Some people aren't. Some people don't know what they are, depending on where they're located. I've seen it out at Pymatuming State Park, where there's a place you put the boat in, and it's you know, there's one of the receptacles right there with signage and everything. But I don't know that people that are on the shore realize what those are.
It's too bad some group or organization doesn't take it upon themselves to even put one of those in all the places where bait is sold and explain to people and explain to the people that are selling the bait that this is what we need to tell people. Hey, don't forget, you know, I just sold you a whole bunch of line, but don't forget, if it breaks off or something happens, you've got to dispose of it properly. I bet they don't even say that.
Probably not.
No, I would imagine not.
Right.
What do you think? Do you think people really talk about it?
There's different groups. I mean, most state parks have fishing line PVC containers like that. And I mean, I've had Boy Scouts do projects in parks and put them up. So different groups will put them up.
They should be at all the lakes, in every place. How expensive is PVC pipe? Not very expensive.
Well, you have to have the permission.
Oh, that's right. And that'll take
Okay.
us at least 2 years to get. I'm
Not
being
necessarily.
facetious, but it takes a long time to get the permission. Anything that's a good idea always takes too long to get permission. What's the line they say? It's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. Just put them up and let them protect these poor animals that are getting caught in stuff like this.
Actually, when we were on Tamarack Lake, we had the conservation department helping us, and the officer stopped, and he had no idea what we were doing. He was thinking we were doing something illegal, but you know, we were digging the hole, putting the 2x4 or 4x4 in, and then securing the, you know, pipe to that, and he had no idea what we were doing, even though we had permission from administration to do it.
I had a friend of mine who happens to have a therapy dog who has recently moved from the Tom Ridge Center. I think she's in Pymatuming doing some education
Oh, I
programs.
know, Stacy.
Yes, and I'm going to ask her, because I run into, in fact, I'll probably
She'll know.
run into her tonight.
Oh, yeah,
I'm going
she'll
to
know.
ask her if there's any reciprocals like that all around Pymatuming.
Ooh, pontoon is so big. I don't know how many they have,
I
but I bet they
know.
have some. Yeah, I bet they have some.
Because she is really huge on education.
Oh,
and
yes.
telling people everything. That's why she's so
Yeah.
excited to be there. She liked Tom Ridge Center, but this is a little bit more of a situation for her down there.
Yeah, she'll
Right.
get more variety of stuff to do down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another place where education gets done from like the park naturalists at the state parks, or, you know, places like Asbury Woods Nature Center, or even the rehabilitators like Tamarack Wildlife Center. So there are places that will try to pass the word on different things that harm wildlife.
Are there, talking about different things, we've talked about the hooks, we've talked about the line. You said something else to me before, what people put down for landscaping.
Yeah, well, this is obviously, fishing line was one of the primary reasons we were talking, but anything that's stringy or net-like, an animal can get potentially, you know, get wrapped around the leg or tangled around a beak.
I don't think people even think about that.
Yeah, there's the goose that Dorothy caught in Erie that had the fishing line in its mouth. And the reason why it couldn't get it out is their tongues have like a fork,
Uh-huh.
and then there's the airway. And what it did, it got caught on this, okay? So when you open up the mouth, it's, you know, the line's caught on the back of the tongue. It looked like, now this goose could not have gotten out of this itself. It looks like somebody cut the line and then let it go thinking it was gonna be okay. So.
The Good Samaritan.
Good
metaphor,
Samaritan,
yeah.
they really do have, you know, they have good intentions. If something were like to happen like that again, my recommendation is cover it over with a blanket and call us.
Yeah, you mentioned that again about covering it with a blanket or a
Some
jacket or something like
whatever.
that.
They don't, yeah,
Is that just with flying wildlife you're talking about, or can you use a jacket or a coat over a lot of different things that
You can.
you can see injured?
And also you can take like a Rubbermaid container, and it's called the box over technique, but it's a general term. You can put a cardboard box over top of something, you can put a Rubbermaid container on top of something. What that does is eliminate the stress of this animal seeing people, because we are predators,
Sure.
you know, and they don't know that we're out to help them. You know, they basically it's just keeping everything dark, warm, and quiet until somebody gets there, in order to keep the animal from going into shock or to be too fearful, because there's a condition called stress myopathy, that if an animal is exposed to a very stressful situation for a period of time, they can actually have problems from stress myopathy, from like a heart attack in people, from it leaches something out of their system that causes the white muscle syndrome, and they
Whenever
can't.
wildlife is fearful of something.
Right.
What'd you say, dark, warm, and quiet? Is that
Dark,
what you
warm,
said?
quiet, and safe. Please don't open the box when there's a cat looking.
Well, yes,
You know,
that certainly wouldn't be a
It's
very
happened.
good idea.
It's
Yeah.
happened, let me tell you.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so if it's all possible, keep the animal covered until we can get there.
Going back, we talked about it for a minute, but I'm not sure we finished that, about landscaping wire. Do people use that? People that are doing landscaping work?
Yeah,
Net-
yeah, it's like a landscaping netting.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you've disturbed the soil and you want to replant it with grass, it's more, I've seen it more commonly where it'll help with the erosion control until
Oh,
the
okay.
grass takes
All right,
hold.
okay.
So it's a netting that can just, and then it's buried under the grass, but it too doesn't decay quickly. So if it starts to string out, I've seen places where the strings were laying on top of the grass, and then the geese were starting to get tangled in it.
What do you find, what animal has the most hazardous reaction or has the most difficulty with the fishing line? The geese or the seagulls?
Geese and gulls both.
Seagulls,
I didn't
In
know.
Erie,
ducks.
geese and gulls both in Erie
Yeah.
are the most common for getting it. Belted kingfishers get caught.
A what?
belted kingfishers.
You always throw these words and I don't know. What is a belted kingfisher?
It's this bird about yay big with a long beak. It's a shorebird. It's a fish eater, so it lives its life along the shoreline primarily, and flies around fishing. So if they get, they'll get tangled in fishing line. Well, and how it happens exactly, sometimes we don't know. We just know, like the example Sue gave, where the barred owl was stuck in a tree hanging by fishing line. I've known of a couple situations where belted kingfishers were caught in fishing line. Whether they get it wrapped around their foot and then perch and get tied to the limb, or whether someone was casting on shore and they went back and they got their lure and line around the limb, and then you can't get it when it's 10 feet above you, but later a bird manages to get wrapped around it. Birds will be literally hanging from trees by fishing line. There was a situation at Presque Isle State Park last year where a great horned owl was hanging from a tree not far from the ranger station, and I got called, but fortunately before I could get there, the park staff at Presque Isle, the maintenance staff and the rangers and the park naturalists all worked together, got the owl down, and by the time I got there I said, "Where's the owl?" They go, "Well, we got it in a crate in the car for you." So I took it to Tamarack Wildlife Center. But yeah, great horned owls, mostly owls and belted kingfishers that get caught in fishing lines and hanging.
Do a lot of people go to Tamarack, that's the main one, isn't it? And see all the things that's there? I mean, they have a constant flow of people in there to see it?
Well,
There's regulation.
They're working, so the public can't just go in and see. I mean, they do have one place set up for outdoor visibility of some of their hawks and owls that are not releasable. Yeah, they're not releasable, so they're education animals and ambassador animals. But while they're working, they can't let you in. It's like certain places at the veterinarian's office you can't go.
Sure.
But they do at least once a year have an open house, and they set up a number of displays and do a variety of things, and they do invite the public in to see the animals, learn more about what they do. But mostly what the public does is if they're able to capture a sick or injured animal, they can contain it in a dark, quiet, box or crate that allows some air into the animal. They can take it to Tamarack. Well, they call Tamarack. You've got to call the wildlife rehabilitator first. Make sure they know you're coming. And
then they call one of you to go get it.
Well, not if you've contained it yourself. You can transport it yourself. If you've already been able to catch it safely and contain it safely in a quiet, dark, safe place, like a cardboard box with air holes or a large Tupperware with some holes in it, you can transport it to Tamarack yourself. So the public goes to Tamarack frequently. I mean, there's probably somebody taking something over there today.
I was just going to ask you, how much does this happen? That an animal needs some type of wind. What is it?
Wildlife and
wildlife or wind. Yeah, wind.
Right.
365 days a year.
Right.
So how many do you see in the course of a year? Do you 5 times a month?
I wish. I'm slowing down. Erie County. Here's the other thing. I live in Erie County, of course, which is a large urban and suburban population. Most of my calls in Erie County are urban and suburban, a few in the rural, whether that's because you've got a larger land area, people don't see the animals. I have to slow down. Every year it keeps increasing as we got better known. In 2023, I answered 200 calls. In 2024, I answered 250. The average in a month for me is how many days are in the month, 30 or 31. Now, it doesn't mean I do a call every single day, but some days I'll do 2 or 3. Now, when I say calls, it doesn't mean I caught 250 animals. It means I occasionally can answer someone's question on the phone and tell them what can or can't be done on the phone. But most of the time it means you went somewhere to try to do something, whether you tried to catch a goose that you couldn't catch, or you got there and the hawk had already passed away before you got there. And then there's plenty of times where you pick something up and take it to Tamarack. I probably went to Tamarack at least 100 times last year.
Really?
Yeah.
And that just indicates that we need more volunteers to help.
How does someone get involved with being a volunteer?
Well, there's a couple of things that we do, but in most cases, they go on our website and under...
Wildlife in Need, WIN.
Yeah, it's winemergencyresponse.com.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a selection for volunteers, and it describes the volunteer opportunities. There's an application process on there. There's some training for those that are interested, and I'm usually the one that calls them up and talks to them about the different types of opportunities and what's involved.
Are there any restrictions on who can not do it?
Well, we do a background check on everybody. I mean, that's typical of any businesses. You know, we have volunteer opportunities. If somebody is handicapped and can't leave their home, they can be a dispatcher.
Right, so anything like that also.
Right,
comes up.
so there's something for everybody if they have an interest in helping wildlife in one way or another. We also have outreach booths that don't involve the intense involvement that a capture transport person does, or a wildlife courier. The capture and transport person is the one that gets the most of the calls. There's also outreach booths that we have somebody that's organizing that for different events that are happening, and we set up the prevention for fishing equipment at that. We try to recruit more people through that outreach booth. We have people that we need to be there
at the booth and explaining this stuff.
Right. In the summer, it's more common than in the winter. You know, usually
It's cold out there today.
Well, I know, but
It's cold for the animals too, but you know what?
Right.
I'm not into the cold that much.
Right. Well, but then some, you know, they don't have as many indoor activities happening that we get included in. But it's usually at the state parks that we go when they have an event. So there's the Veg Fest that I never heard about that until this year.
What is that?
It's a festival of all sorts of vegetable foods. Dorothy went to one down in Pittsburgh. Is it Pittsburgh or Washington County?
And what's that?
Pittsburgh has a large festival. It's mostly they promote like vegan food, animal welfare, animal rescue. All those kinds of organizations would have booths there.
Is there anything that people should get rid of properly instead of just throwing it out for the wildlife to eat? I know I had a friend of mine who had potbelly pigs, and she was thrilled to death whenever fall came along because there was a lot of pumpkins and stuff like that that they would gather from people that didn't want them in their gardens and just give them. But are there things that are hazardous to some of this wildlife that should not just be automatically assumed we can throw this out into the woods somewhere? Oh, hello there, how are you? And what's his name?
I didn't name him.
He needs a name besides Duck.
We'll give that responsibility to you.
Yes, but this is something that really bothers me.
Right.
That people that will not cut these apart.
Yeah, I'm very anal about it. I
Me
cut
too.
everyone up
I do too.
before I throw it in the garbage.
What about plastic bags?
Yes.
Are these
Plastic.
dangerous too?
Yes. Look at the strings. When people were wearing those during COVID, and you know, sometimes you lose them because they fall out of the car or whatever, but you know, animals are getting caught up. Here's more things.
Oh, this one here's my words.
Yeah,
What about
that's-
plastic bags in general?
Yes, they definitely need to cut up or not.
What do I have to do
not
about them?
put
I do that for the recycling.
Well, right. I'm really anal. I've gotten
Do
to
you
the point-
recycle?
Yes.
Do you just rinse it out and throw it in the recycle bin? Then
I
garbage
wash it
bin?
out. I don't just rinse it, I wash it out.
I don't wash them out. I just usually throw them in.
Right. So people, That, the peanut butter jars, the plastic ones where we have a picture of a raccoon that's stuck, they can't, they can't get it off of them.
If there's any food left in the
Right.
container,
You'll
there
go
is a
after it.
risk that an animal will stick their head in to try to get it out, and of course, they could get stuck.
You never would think that this would be dangerous.
Why is it dangerous? Put their head in there.
They'll put their head in there. Oftentimes, they can't get it back out. When you throw them away, I cut them like this.
I've never thought about that. I'm
A lot of
I'm
people
only
don't.
with you on one. I'm really with you on this one. This one
Okay.
here bothers me the most.
This,
Yeah.
a duck or any bird that's big enough that is picking something out from in the middle of this, they don't think, oh, it's gonna get caught. They get the ring caught around their necks or around their beak or whatever. These are on milk containers.
Yes, they are.
I cut here and I cut this. People don't think about it. Now,
No, I don't think about that one. I think about the easy one.
until we stop using plastics, and there's some countries that don't. No plastic bags, no plastic whatever. They've gone to alternative. The United States has not. And until we stop using things like this that can hurt people, that can hurt animals, we're still going to have this problem. Look at this.
What the heck is that?
That was something on a chicken broth container that you get.
You could do a whole program on this.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
else do you have in your bag of tricks
Well,
there?
this is it. See,
What is this one? Oh, this is the,
Okay, now take a look. There's a
That's
loop.
ball tab.
yep.
So I take the loops off and cut them.
You do
Take
that
a
on
look.
everything, all the time.
Yep. My water bottle. Usually there's if you're,
That little thing inside
Yeah,
of that, the
there's a
small
little-
little.
once these go somewhere and they get smashed or whatever, the rings will come off. So I actually cut, I'm anal. This, because they don't want this type of bag recycled, I cut here and here.
Do they recycle other just regular Walmart bags?
You have to look,
Different
yes.
places?
Yes.
I have so many of those. And they're hazardous.
Yeah, they are, because if there's a food source in there, and I've seen this on Pettus Road, and I've seen raccoons get hit by cars that have these wrapped around their paws. And this scares them. As they move more, it scares them. And then they get hit, because they're just running, they're running scared.
How many more things could you?
Now, wait a minute,
Oh,
go back to recycling.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, because I got a giant eagle.
Uh-huh.
I take all my bags and put them in their recycle thing.
At Walmart too.
They probably have it at Walmart, they probably have it at Tops, they probably have it at other stores, I don't know
Well, they
who all.
should.
They should, and I look for them.
Doesn't that make you anal because you are crazy about this?
Yeah, I'm getting older, and so I do get
Oh, I know
anal.
you're, when you're sitting around doing nothing, you think about, I have that, and I should,
I look
yeah.
at everything anymore, even this. I had a rehabilitator that I was visiting hand me this, I don't know for what reason, I think she wanted me to throw it away. And I looked at that, and she's an educator. And I went like this until I snapped it. Here you go.
Well, there's so
She
much
had
of that.
no idea. Yes, because we don't think about the damage that we're doing in our environment.
No, we don't.
Right.
And as you say, my bigger concern is if, I might be really rude now, if a human being has a problem with one of these and they get injured, I always say, too bad, you should have realized that. But there's animals that are totally, completely helpless
Right.
that need help with so many of these issues.
Right. The issue is get rid of plastics.
That's never going to happen.
It may. England's done it, is what I've been told. I was surprised because I didn't know anybody had. When I went down to Cuba, I visited Cuba, it's beautiful down there. And I went on one side of an island and it was just full of
Plastic.
plastics.
I've seen something like that.
I saw it, yeah, but when you see things in person, when you have hands-on with anything, it makes you more conscious of what you need to do to protect them. That's where Dorothy and I are at. That's where any of us that see these things, what damage it does, then we know how to educate people because we've experienced it.
What else? I mean, we've talked about the line, we've talked about the fishing line and stuff like that, we've talked about all these containers. Is there something that is as much of an issue as this is that we haven't mentioned? I mean, I'm sure.
Well, the issue is that, you know, there's no one to enforce little laws. There's signs out there, please don't litter, but there's no one enforcing it. There's not enough
Well,
people to enforce it.
No, there isn't. So there's
And
any other
so-
way, the other side of the coin is to educate them.
Right, exactly.
Because if we even, if next summer or next spring or whatever, if 25 people watching this just take it upon themselves to be aware of the fishing line, to be aware of the cans and stuff like that, look how much we've saved. I can't stand people that are mean to animals, any kind, let alone a dog. But anything that's an
Right.
animal, I can't stomach it. I can't
Right.
stand you if you do anything to animals or if you do anything to children.
We're all in the same boat here.
Yes, now if they're an adult, I say, oh, that adult's kind of stupid. And I don't have a lot of sympathy towards them, and I can't boggle my mind with trying to save the world. But if I can do something for the animals and for little kids and stuff like that, and
Right.
get them educated, because this is terrible.
Right. Well, you have to approach, you can't approach somebody, no matter who it is, with anger.
No, it doesn't work at all.
Right. And it's just being diplomatic, and there's people that will not listen, and you can't help them. You know, if they will not listen, they don't care. You can't help them, but I'd say the majority of people do care.
Well, I think they do too.
Right.
You have to believe that. Because if you
Right.
didn't believe that, you'd be spending a lot of nights wide awake saying, what am I going to do about
Right.
this? Have you ever done an entire program on all this kind of stuff?
This is
And who
what
does
we,
that?
This is what we do on our outreach booths.
And show them all this stuff?
Right.
Is this just in your little bag here, or do you have
Oh, no, we have totes. We have totes of stuff.
that have stuff that can harm animals and dogs and cats?
Yes, everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Well, why don't you come back and do that for me? A program like that, because I think this is pathetic. And that doggone things on 6-packs of beer and stuff like that
Sodas.
really agitates me.
All kinds.
I stand and cut those all apart. Although sometimes I don't cut them as much as I should. But I think you've got to cut every one of those little
You do.
places, don't you?
You do every hole. You have to cut it.
And we've got to get more of these receptacles for the fishing line.
Right.
But we've got to get the message out to all the people that have bait shops too, that sell the
Right.
fishing lines.
Right.
All those people could help. Look how much those people could help.
Mm-hmm.
Putting signs on all the bait shops whenever they go out the door. Remember your fishing line, dispose of your fishing line properly. There's got to be somebody
think-
that wants a
Yeah.
community project. That would be a great community project.
And we need to get the Boat and Fish Commission involved too. And they may be involved, I don't know. I'd have to visit them to see what they do.
I don't know either.
I know there's brochures, you know.
I had never heard about it until we talked about it.
I've heard that many, many times.
I'm sure, and it isn't because I'm stupid or ignorant. No one ever took the time to explain it to me.
Right.
You find that with everything. You can't be mad at somebody who does something wrong when they don't know how to do it differently.
Right.
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern over a lot of the things that I do.
Right.
I do a lot with the dog training and stuff like that. And sometimes I want to take some of these handlers and just put my hands on and say, what is wrong with you? Why don't you understand this? But you can't expect them to do something right unless you tell them the right way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever want to come back and bring your whole bag of tricks with you, I'm just amazed at this. I've known about these, And I certainly knew about that doggone plastic.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, I really should recycle my plastic bags.
Right.
I got piles of them. But I usually, now I'm gonna tell you, I recycle because whenever I clean up the kitty litter,
Yeah.
Right.
I put it in here and then I go like this, and then I throw it into the garbage.
Yeah.
And now whenever it goes to its next location, guess what? That bag's still there.
And you think about where those all go. Where
Where
does
do
all
they
the
go?
garbage go?
Aren't there
Landfills.
islands and places?
Landfills, and this is where we find birds of prey, which including the vultures,
Yeah.
that and gulls. That, I mean, there's that place up in Erie. I'm thinking going up
We
What do
call
you
it
call
Mount Trashmore.
Mount Trashmore.
Is that what it is?
The highest point is trash disposal
Isn't that
facility.
something?
Yeah.
Anything else about the fishing line? Because that was our initial thing. Although, you know
I-
me, I always see these other things that amaze me. I say, oh, I'm kind of interested
Sure,
in that.
Just people that are watching this, that they spread the word.
Or find
That-
kids in a Boy Scout group.
Oh, yeah,
or
go-
Girl Scouts
go do a
that
cleanup.
should put up a sign and make their project. They would go to all the bait shops in and around Lionsville and put up a sign. God, that'd be a wonderful project.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All we have to do is get them to do it and then get it put in a newspaper and everybody covers it. That's sometimes hard to do. It's a
Right.
painstaking thing, but it certainly would have benefits to it.
Well, not only on newspaper, other social medias, which I'm not real familiar with. You know, the word needs to get out. And I can tell you that a lot of our capture and transport people have learned what is happening with our environment, and they go to a community pond and walk weekly and pick up line. They said they can fill up a bag like that
Of line that's on the
of
ground.
line and other stuff, plastics.
Okay, so Armstrong has this large number of people on Armstrong and YouTube who watch all our things. Boy, if everybody that watches this would just make
A difference.
20 different changes that you would make and 20 ways that you would do this, just think how much that would be.
Right,
That would be fantastic. Get that word out.
right.
Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate it. This was interesting. I like the fishing line, but I was really amazed by that. And that poor stuffed duck there that's got that thing on its head.
Yeah, and you get to name it.
My names wouldn't be proper. They wouldn't be
Can't
probably
use them
like
acceptable.
Squirt
at a public
or something.
table.
Pardon me?
You can't use them at a public table.
That's probably me. I have all these thoughts that always jump into the back of my head, and I have a hard time putting my hand over my mouth, remembering certain things I shouldn't say.
Right.
And then that gets the best of me, and then I say things I shouldn't say. But anyway, well, if you'll come back, and I would love you to come back with a whole table of this stuff here, of all the doggone stuff that we need to tell people about and have them see in person. And this is better, we can't bring them in here, but we could certainly put it all over this table, all the different things and talk about it. And different ideas on things, but boy, that's great. Thank
Well,
you.
give me the summer months to go around and clean up ponds, and I'll keep the bags and bring them in.
That would
You know,
work.
keep them in bags. And,
We would appreciate it, and especially even just this kind of stuff here, because whenever I do all my recycling, I'm very good at that. But I never think that some poor little cat or something is gonna get their head stuck in that can from beans or something like that.
well,
Could be
yogurt
too.
containers are my favorite.
Yes,
and peanut
yes.
butter containers.
Well, thanks very much for coming. Thanks, Dorothy.
Oh, you're
Anything else you
welcome.
want to add?
No, I think Dorothy was going to say something, weren't you? No.
Okay, well, good. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Appreciate it.